Hello, math geniuses. It's time to get started. Chapter 13.5, and we're on page 582 right there. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to start with functions and ordered pairs and how we're going to graph these, and it's going to be a really fun lesson today. So let's go ahead and get started with first, starting with this example 1 right here. F of x is equal to x minus 2. Remember, you can write f of x as just y, which over here I actually did. I said that's the same thing as just saying it's a y. So you're welcome to do that. But f of x, it's a function. Our function is that we're going to take every value that we have and we're going to subtract 2 from it. Okay? Every value that we have, we're going to subtract 2 from it. So let's start with this value right here. They give us an x value of a negative 4. Then we're going to take a negative 4 and we're going to subtract 2 from it. And then we're going to get negative 6, right? Negative 4 take away 2 is a negative 6. Our next value that they give us is a negative 1. Negative 1, plug it in. Plug it in right there. Negative 1 take away 2. Negative 1 take away 2 is negative 3. Okay? Plug in a 0. Zeros are always the easiest, so let's plug in 0. 0 is the easiest. Always plug in 0. 0, plug it in. 0 take away 2, so it'll be 0 take away 2, and 0 take away 2 is negative 2. Okay? So that means when you plug in a 0, out comes a negative 2. When you plug in a negative 1, out came the negative 3. When you input a negative 4, right, you get an output of a negative 6. Down here, when you input your x value, right, this is your x value, you're inputting an x value of a negative 3, you plug it in, positive 3, 3 take away 2 is going to give you a 1, and that's going to be your f of x, or your y value, because f of x is the same thing as y. When you do that, notice that when you plugged in a negative 4 and out came a negative 6, we could write that as negative 4 was the input, negative 6 is the output. That's your input of your x value, that's your output of your negative 6 value, that's your y value. So then over here, negative 1, plug it in, you get it out of negative 3. So you plugged in a negative 1, you got out a negative 3. This stuff should make some pretty good sense to you. And then 0, you plugged in a 0, you got a negative 2, so we write that as 0 comma negative 2, meaning you inputted a 0, you output as a negative 2, your x coordinate is the 0, your y coordinate or your f of x is the negative 2, and we're going to end up graphing these in a second. So what I want you guys to do is to do your skill check really quickly, and then we're going to go ahead and correct that skill check. So do your skill check right now. Pause this right now and do your skill check. Pause, 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 pause. Well, let's go ahead and get it up here and check it out. All right. Perfect. All right, let's check out our skill check. So our skill check right here, skill check number 1, page 582. Hopefully you had a chance to do it. Y equals 2x plus 7. That's our new function. Y equals 2x plus 7. We're going to take all of our x values, our inputs, we're going to double them. We're going to multiply by 2, and we're going to add 7. So multiply by 2, add 7. Let's try it. They told us what to plug in. They say plug in a negative 2. So we plug in a negative 2 for our x values, because we're inputting them for x. We plug in a negative 2 for our x value, and we plug it in right there. So 2 times negative 2, that's negative 4. Negative 4 plus 7 is going to give you 3. Boom. That's going to be a negative 4 and plus 7. Okay, negative 4 plus 7 is 3. Plug in a 1. 2 times 1. That's 2. 2 times 1 is 2 plus 7. Oh, 2 plus 7 is 9. So you get a 9. So we inputted a 1 into our function, and out comes a 9. How about we plug in the number 4 this time? 2 times 4 is 8. Oh, I lost my cap. 2 times 4 is 8. 8 plus 7? 15. Okay? So you're going to get a coordinate of negative 2. You plugged in, out comes a 3. So we write this as negative 2, out comes a 3. You plugged in a 1, and out came a 9. So we're going to say plug in a 1, and out comes a 9. And then when you plug in a 4, you get a 15. So you plug in a 4, out comes a 15. So we got 1, 2, 3 different answers here. 3 different coordinates. And eventually, we're going to end up grading these. I got to get my cap. Hold on. I got it. Okay, so let's go ahead and keep on going. Let's look at example number 2, page 583. Example 2, f of x, my function, or you could call it y. I don't care. Y equals 4x plus 1, or the function is equal to 4x plus 1. This time we're going to take our x as our inputs, and we're going to multiply by 4. We're going to quadruple it, and then add 1 to it. So take our numbers. They give us the numbers that we're going to plug in. Take that number, multiply by 4, so take 4 times that number, and then add 1. So 4 times a negative 1, that's a negative 4, and negative 4 plus 1 is a negative 3. Okay? Plug in a 0. 4 times 0, that's 0. That just goes away. You just get 1. Half. Oh, we're plugging in fractions now? Snap. 4 times a half, that's just the number 2. 4 times a half, this just turns into number 2. Half of 4 is just 2, so 2 plus 1. That's going to give you 3. And over here, 2, plug in a 2. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 plus 1, that's going to give you a 9. So what would these coordinates look like? What would these ordered pairs look like? Is you plugged in a -1 and out comes a -3. So -1, -3. We plugged in a 0, out comes a 1. Plug in a 0, out comes a 1. Plug in a 1/2, out comes a 3. So plug in a 1/2, out comes a 3. Plug in a 2 and out comes a 9. Plug in a 2 and out comes a 9. You know what we could do? I'm going to give you a little heads up on this. We are going to be a little advanced. We're bonus, advanced students, so we're going to go ahead and graph these. That's what we're going to learn on the next example, but I'm going to give you a preview. If I wanted to graph this, my x value is -1, my y value is -3. So on the x-axis, I'll go to -1. On the y-axis, I'll go to -3, and I'll put a dot. So remember, you start at the origin. You start right here. Start right there. Put a -1 on my x. So remember, my x-axis is this one. My y-axis is that one. So I'll start at the origin, go to the x-axis at -1. This is -1. So go to -1. And then on the y-axis, I got to go to -3. So I got to go down 1, 2, 3. And put a big old fatty dot down here at -3. Okay? So I went over to the -1, down to the -3, over the -1, down to the -3. I put a big old fatty dot. Okay? Next. 0, 1. So my x coordinate, my input was a 0. My y coordinate that comes out was a 1. So if I plug in a 0, I get out a 1. We'll put that on the coordinate plane. That means start at the origin. I'm going to start right here. That's 0. And it says, don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere. Just start at the origin. Don't go anywhere. And then on the y value, go up 1. My y-axis go up 1. So right to there. Put a big old fatty dot right there. That's this one. Then 1/2, 3. 1/2, 3 means start back at the origin. You're going to go to the 1/2, and then on the x-axis, and then go to the 3 on the y-axis. 1/2 on the x-axis, that means don't go all the way over. This would be 1 and 2 and 3. I don't want to go all the way to the 1. I just want to go to the half. I'm halfway there. So I'm going to go to half, and I'm going to go up 3. 1, 2, 3. Remember, this is a big old fatty dot. This is bonus. You don't need to know how to do this yet, but we're advanced. We can handle it. All right, let's keep it going. Last but not least, 2, 9. If I start at the origin, I go over to 2 on the x-axis. I go up 9 on the y-axis. Let's go over 1, 2 on the x. Go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 on the y. If you notice that these dots, I don't know if you can tell, it's kind of like going in a line that way. Like we could connect these dots. My line's going to look pretty bad because I'm a terrible drawer. But this is my line. Ultimately, that's what we're going to end up doing is connecting these dots. But that's bonus material because we don't need to know that yet. We're just so advanced, I think you can handle it. So I'm going to stop right here, and I'm going to go ahead and we're going to continue on. Why don't you guys do the skill check practice, and I will get back to you on the answers. Skill check, go! And we're back with the skill check. So if you look here at our skill check, problem number 2, we have our function, which is -2x minus 3 this time. So if I plug that in, I'm going to be plugging all my values into my -2x minus 3. So I've got my x values that I'm plugging in. Okay, they told me what to plug in. I'm plugging them into my function right here. So -2 gets plugged in right there. Well, a -2 times a -2, that's a positive 4. And 4 take away 3 is 1. And then we're going to plug in 0. So -2 times 0, that cancels out. You just get your -3. A minus 3 is a minus 3. Okay? And then over here, we're going to have a 3 halves. Plug in a 3 halves. -2 times 3 halves. That's careful over here. I did a little work. -2 times 3 halves is going to be a -2 times a 3 is going to be a -6 over a 2. -6 is the same thing as a -3. So it's -3 take away 3, which gives you a -6. That's a little bit confusing, but take some time to look at that one. Here, if you plug in a 5.7, these are getting kind of ugly. -2 times 5.7, well, 5.7 times a -2, that's an 11.4. I did that for you over there. And if you take away 3 from that, you're going to get a -14.4. So there's some answers for you for your skill check. You're welcome to pause and go back over that if you need to. And we're going to go ahead and start on the next example. Next example is example 3, page 585. Let's get started. We have y equals 3, y equals x plus 3, and we're graphing it this time. We're going to create a coordinate, an ordered pair, and then we're going to graph this thing. It's going to be fun. Now, we have some rules. You've got to at least pick 3 points to graph. You can pick whatever 3 points you want, but you have to have at least 3 points that we're going to be graphing just to make sure that we're accurate. So they, in the book, if you follow along, they pick some points for you, but you can pick whatever ones you want. Traditionally, you want to pick easy ones. Don't pick -17.3 because then you have to do the work, right? So pick something easy. They pick -2, 0, and 2. So -2, 0, and 2. When you plug that into your equation, right, you get 1, 3, and 5 as your output. So -2 plugs it in, you get a 1 out. That's a coordinate of a -2, 1. let's go ahead and graph that. Like when you get a negative 2, 1, let's graph it. When you plug in a negative 2, out comes a 1. That's a coordinate right there. I'm going to graph this coordinate. Negative 2, 1 means start at the origin. You go to negative 2 and then up 1. So pick a big old fatty dot there. You went over to the negative 2, you went up to the 1. Here, you plugged in a 0, you got out a 3. So 0, 3. Let's graph this one. 0, 3. Start at the origin. Don't go anywhere on the x-axis because you have a 0. But you're going to need to go 3 on the y-axis. So go up to 3. Put a big old fatty dot. And then 2, 5. Let's graph that one. You're going to start at the origin. You're going to go over to 2 on the x-axis, and then you're going to go up to 5 on the y. So go over to 2 on the x, and go up to 5 on the y. Put another big old fatty dot. If you notice, these dots are creating a line. Let's go ahead and connect our dots to create our line. It's pretty easy. You guys can handle this. Let's go ahead and look for example number 4. Same thing. You got a function here, a y equals or f of x equals. This time we're going to triple all of our x's, 3x, so 3 times our x's, and then subtract 1. So take a negative 1. When you move 3 times a negative 1, that's a negative 3. When you subtract 1 from that, you're going to get a negative 4. That's the coordinate negative 1, negative 4, written like this, right there. Let's graph it. Negative 1, negative 4. Start at the origin. Okay? You're going to go to the negative 1, and you're going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4 to the negative 4. So you're going to go negative 1 on the x, negative 4 on the y. Big old fatty dot. And then 0, negative 1. Well, if you start at the origin and you don't go anywhere, you're not going anywhere on the x-axis. You're just going to go straight down for your y value. They're negative 1. So go straight down to negative 1. There you go. Big old fatty dot. And then that was that one. Let's do the last one, 2, 5. So you're going to go over to 2 on the x. You're going to go up to 5 on the y. So start at the origin. Go over to 2 on the x. Go up to 5 on the y. Another big old fatty dot. If you can tell, this is creating a little bit of a line. Again, if you miss it, just make it bigger, right? Make them bigger. I'm kind of not a very good drawer, but you guys can work with me. So go ahead, finish up that lesson there. We're all good to go. You guys can start your homework, and if you have any questions, make sure you ask. Thanks a lot. Landon out.